A cold wind howled through the toppled buildings, echoing through the deserted streets. Once teeming with life, the roads were now littered with ashes and rusted heaps of metal. The sky was obscured by a thick layer of dust and smoke, hiding the sun from view. Yet, amidst this desolation, life still persisted, a group of young survivors bravely clinging to existence. The group's leader, Isolde, moved forward, clutching an old Geiger counter in her hand. The flickering signals on the device's screen indicated an area that could be relatively safe. Her eyes were steely, her face tense. As she stepped carefully among the rubble of the fallen buildings, she broke the silence. "We've found a clean zone. It's safe here for now," she said. The 4 others behind her watched her every move with sharp focus. Vesper, the most skilled hunter of the group, gripped his dagger tightly. His muscular, tanned face was taut. As he scanned the ruins around them, he leaned toward Isolde. "It's too quiet. Don't you wonder why this place is empty?" he asked. "Radiation might have cleared it out," Erix said with a hint of hopelessness. Erix, the group's tech expert, played a crucial role in their survival. Holding up a digital map, he added, "This used to be an industrial center. We might find some useful supplies around here." Vesper, still scanning the surroundings with suspicion, replied, "And what if all we find is death?" Isolde noticed the tension settling over the group and took a deep breath. This world was no longer what it once was. The burden of keeping her friends and herself constantly on the edge of danger weighed heavily on her shoulders. "We're face to face with death at every moment. But we're alive. And that's our victory," she said, her voice calm and resolute. Thalassa, the group's youngest member and an aspiring astronomer, slowly lifted her head. As she studied the gray sky, she said, "I can guess the sun's position. If we head west, we'll reach an old settlement." Her voice was calm but carried an undertone of worry. "But night is approaching. We need to move quickly." Isolde turned to the rest of the group and said, "All right, we'll head west. But first, we need to rest. We have to spend the night in a safe place." Lyra, another group member known for her quiet and emotional gaze, touched Isolde's shoulder. "Staying out in the dark may not be a good idea," she said softly, but with a deep-seated fear beneath her gentle tone. "Maybe we can find shelter in these ruins." As the group contemplated this idea, Vesper suddenly froze. He thought he saw movement in the shadows of the charred buildings. "Something is watching us," he whispered. Everyone was instantly on alert. Their hands went to their weapons. Vesper, frowning slightly, stepped forward. "About 5 meters ahead, there's movement." "I can feel it," he said. Isolde tried to control her racing heart as she checked her device again. She took a few steps forward and opened the door of an old building. Inside, amid the toppled furniture and shattered glass, they found an abandoned shelter. "We can stay here," she said. "But if Vesper is right, we need to be on guard." Everyone hurried inside. As Erix placed some metal scraps behind the door, he said, "This might be safe for a while, but we need to keep moving." Meanwhile, Lyra lit a small candle. "Our eyes need to be sharper in this darkness," she said. Night had fallen, and the sky was pitch black. The group, huddled closer in the shelter hidden among the ruins, was silent. Only Isolde kept watch, listening to the faint sound of the wind. She looked at her companions, trying to suppress the fear inside her. In the darkness of the night, only shadows moved. This silence was deadly. For a moment, a haunting thought crossed her mind. Was there still hope in this world? As the hours passed, a rustling sound broke the silence. Isolde jerked upright, gripping her dagger tightly. As she peered into the darkness, she noticed a pair of glowing eyes among the shadows. Instinctively, she leaped to her feet. "Wake up! There's something here!" she shouted. Everyone sprang up, but the creature outside had already started moving. It was nearly the size of a human, but too savage to be one. It was a mutant, a being that had once been human but had lost all traces of humanity. Vesper lunged forward with his dagger. The creature leaped at him, slashing with its claws. A brief but fierce struggle ensued between them. With a swift and powerful strike, Vesper sliced the creature's neck deeply, and it collapsed to the ground with a gurgling sound. Isolde quickly approached the creature to check it. The glow in its eyes had faded. "This is just the beginning. There are more of them out there," she said, her voice serious and filled with concern. Thalassa was horrified by the scene. We don't know how many more there are, she said, her voice trembling. As Eric's helped the injured Vesper, he said, we're not the only ones in this world. A different life form is evolving here. We have a lot more to learn if we want to survive. Isolde fixed her gaze on the dark horizon. We have to become stronger. We'll fight to reclaim this world, she said. Her eyes were filled with determination, and the strength in her voice gave hope to the entire group. That night, the group grew even closer. Each one of them was ready to go one step further to keep themselves and their friends alive. Because this world was no longer what it used to be. To be reborn from the ashes, they first had to survive within them. As the weight of the night settled over Isolde and her group, the tension among them grew palpable. The few hours they spent in the shelter were peaceful compared to the dangers outside, but this peace was only temporary. The creatures that had evolved due to radiation could attack at any moment, forcing them to fight for their lives. While keeping watch, Isolde found herself lost in thought. Memories of her past life, old hopes, and dreams flooded her mind. She didn't just want to survive in this world, she wanted to build a civilization. But laying the foundation for such a civilization meant facing death at every turn. Suddenly, a faint sound around her snapped her out of her thoughts. Isolde, can't sleep? Asked Lyra, quietly approaching her. Isolde turned and smiled slightly. I think sleep has become a luxury in this world, she said. Lyra sighed softly and sat down next to her. Do you always have to be so strong? You seem like you're never afraid, she said, her voice gentle but with a hint of concern. Isolde gazed into the distance. I am afraid, she admitted honestly. But fear will keep us alive. If we don't fear, we become careless. And carelessness in this world brings death. Meanwhile, Vesper was changing her bloodied bandage. The wounds she had received during the creature's attack were minor but painful enough to keep her awake. Our only priority right now is survival, she said. We need to learn more about these creatures. If we're caught off guard in the next attack, we won't stand a chance. Eric's was fiddling with a technological device in his hands. These creatures may not be as intelligent as the old humans, but they're still dangerous. They seem to be acting on instinct, he said thoughtfully. They're trying to survive too, Lyra said softly. But that won't stop them. We need to trust our own instincts as well. By morning, the group silently prepared. As they packed their belongings, Isolde's mind was still on the attack they'd faced during the night. Vesper was right. The key to survival was understanding this new world. Thalassa, the youngest member of the group, looked up at the sky and said, We need to head west. We might find fresh water there. Isolde looked at her companions. They were all ready, but the look in their eyes showed something else. Each of them was tired, scared, but determined not to give up. Let's move out, Isolde said decisively. We need to head west and find that water source. But stay alert. The creatures might not only attack at night. As the group moved through the ruins, they observed their surroundings carefully. The streets were still eerily silent, with only the wind sweeping through the dust and ash. The traces of the old life were everywhere. Cars were overturned, buildings were in ruins. Once, people walked here, but now only a handful of survivors tried to stand among the ashes. During their walk, Eric suddenly stopped. Wait, there's something here, he said in a hushed voice. He had noticed an old security door on the ground. This could be an old shelter. Vesper and Isolde exchanged glances. A shelter? Vesper asked. Maybe we could find something useful inside. But it could also be a trap. Isolde narrowed her eyes and approached the edge of the door. Eric's pulled out an old device and began trying to unlock it. This door might lead to one of the facility's shelters, he said. If there's anything still operational inside, it could give us an advantage. Eric's hands worked steadily. The old-world technology could make a big difference in their survival. After several attempts, the door creaked open. The first beam of light that entered illuminated the inside of the shelter. Inside were old generators, shelves full of ammunition and supplies. Incredible, Thalassa said. We really found a shelter. Lyra, inspecting the area, said, We might be safe here for a while. But for how long? We need to check if there's anything else inside, Vesper said. Let's also check the weapons. Ours are barely enough. The group quickly began examining the shelter. The ammunition on the shelves was still ready for use. But the real surprise was an old monitor in the corner. Eric's quickly examined the device and tried to get it to work. The monitor flickered for a moment before an old security camera feed appeared on the screen. They weren't alone inside. "There's movement in the footage," Eric said. His anxiety grew as he closely watched the screen. "There could be other people here." "Or other creatures," Vesper added. Isolde studied the screen. The footage showed shadows moving quickly among the ruins. They looked like human silhouettes, but it was hard to tell exactly what they were. This footage might be old. "But whatever the case, we need to stay cautious," she said. After spending a few hours in the shelter, the group prepared to head out. But Eric's continued to monitor the signals from the screen. "This many signals isn't normal," he said with concern. "There's something out there." Just then, a noise came from outside the shelter door. Lyra quickly stepped back. "What is that?" she asked fearfully. Vesper swiftly drew her weapon and approached the door. "Be ready," she said firmly. Isolde gripped her dagger and took position in front of the door. Behind it, they could hear deep breathing. The group waited on high alert, and suddenly, the door shook violently. Everyone's heart raced. When the door burst open, they found themselves face to face with another group of humans. However, these humans looked wild. They had mutated due to radiation, becoming unrecognizable. What were once humans had now turned into savage creatures. "Prepare your weapons," Isolde shouted. The group began defending themselves against the feral human-creature hybrids that attacked them viciously. Vesper quickly attacked with her dagger, while Thalassa drew her bow and shot one of the creatures in the chest. Eric's managed to confuse the creatures with a mechanical device, slowing their movements. In the midst of the battle, Isolde locked eyes with one of the creatures. This was once a human, maybe a father or an ordinary citizen. But now, there was only a monster in front of her. For a moment, she felt pity, but it quickly passed. Survival came at a heavy price. After the last creature was subdued, the group was left panting. Silence fell after the fight. "This is just the beginning," Eric said. "There could be more." Isolde looked at her injured companions and said, "We need to get out of this shelter. We need to move away as soon as possible." As Vesper tended to her wounds, she said, "We can't stay in one place for long anymore. We could be attacked at any moment." Isolde looked at her group with determination. "This world is trying to kill us. But we'll be stronger. We will survive." And so, the group set out into the unknown. This new world had shown them how hard it was to survive. But it also showed them that survival was possible. The daylight barely pierced the ash-covered sky. The weary footsteps of Isolde and her group echoed through the empty streets amidst the ruins. They had survived the night's creature attack, but questions and fears still lingered in everyone's minds. This world was more dangerous than they had anticipated. As Isolde scanned the map in her hand, she paused and turned to speak to the others. "Just a bit further from here, there used to be a city center. There might still be supplies we can use or sturdy buildings we can take shelter in," she said with determination. Vesper, gritting his teeth as he tended to his wound, replied, "I hope this time we find somewhere safe to rest. The creatures could attack again at any moment. We don't have much time." Thalassa, her gaze darting nervously around, added, "We know that, but how far can we go? Right now, we neither have the weapons nor the strength. What if we don't survive the next attack?" Isolde looked into Thalassa's eyes. "If we stop, we'll die in these ashes. If we keep moving, we might have a chance. Just a chance. But in this world, chance is the key to survival," she said, her voice carrying a stubborn resolve. Eric's, after listening to the surroundings in silence, spoke up. "I hear something," he said. The group paused for a moment. Eric's crouched down and pressed his ear to the ground. "It sounds like a machine. Maybe a generator. Or some kind of underground system." "How far ahead?" Lyra asked. "About a kilometer," Eric's replied. "But it indicates there was a settlement here once. Something's still running." The group continued forward, carefully checking for any dangers around them. Their journey through the ruins required constant vigilance. Isolde had to remain alert at all times to protect her team. However, The long walk was starting to slow them down. Everyone was exhausted, injured, and on the brink of despair. When they finally reached the old city center marked on the map, they found a massive, dilapidated building towering before them. It had once been a large shopping mall. The surroundings were completely covered in ash, but it was still possible to enter. Isolde and Vesper approached the entrance and forced the door open. The air inside was heavy and dusty, but it seemed relatively safe. "Let's go in," Isolde said. "We can rest here for a while." Once inside, the group began to cautiously inspect the area. This had once been a place where people spent time, had fun, and shopped. Now, it was just a ruin, a decaying structure. Still, some of the materials they found inside could prove hopeful for their survival. Thalassa found a few cans of food left on the shelves and quickly gathered them. "We need to regroup as quickly as possible," Vesper said, clutching his injured arm. "The quieter we are, the better." But just then, Erix felt a vibration coming from the depths of the building. "There's something under this building," he said with concern. Isolde narrowed her eyes as she looked around. What could it be? Maybe an old shelter or tunnel system, she speculated thoughtfully. This building might have been a strategic location in its time. "There's something," Erix insisted. "Remember that machine sound I heard? Maybe we can find a way down to the basement of this building." Vesper frowned skeptically. "This place already seems dangerous. Going even deeper could be risky," he said. Lyra quietly spoke to Isolde. "But maybe what we find down there could be the discovery that ensures our survival. We need everything we can get right now." Isolde thought for a moment, then spoke decisively. "If there's something down there, we need to find it. But we have to be careful. We'll move together." When they found a staircase leading to the lower floors of the building, the group ventured into the dark tunnels. The environment grew colder as they descended. The walls were damp, adorned with old drawings and slogans. This shelter might once have been a beacon of hope for people, but now only darkness and uncertainty reigned. Isolde led the way, lighting the path with a small flashlight she carried. The others followed quietly behind her. The echoing footsteps reverberated in the depths of the tunnel with each step they took. After progressing for a while, Erix suddenly stopped. "There's a door here," he said, moving to the side of the door to examine it. The door resembled that of an old bunker, but there were strange symbols on it. "What do these mean?" Thalassa asked. Isolde looked closely at the symbols. "I don't know," she replied. "But it could be a warning." Erix began working to open the door with his device, and it creaked open. The inside was even darker and more gloomy. But what caught their attention was the massive machinery inside. Old generators, panels, and computers seemed to still be functioning. "Incredible," Lyra said. "This place is still active." But at that moment, a rustling sound was heard. The group fell silent, looking at each other with alertness. Isolde tightened her grip on her weapon. From the darkness, a silhouette emerged. Before them stood an evolved version of the creatures they had encountered. But this creature didn't appear as a wild beast. It seemed more like a conscious being. There was an intelligence in its eyes. Who are you?" The creature spoke in a low, hoarse voice. The group stood frozen in shock. For a moment, no one spoke. Finally, Isolde gathered her courage. "We are survivors," she said. "We're trying to find our place in this world." The creature took a step forward. "This world, it brought an end to all of us," it said. "But there is still hope. Here, with these machines, we can make a new beginning. But it won't be as easy as you think." Isolde listened carefully to the creature's words. This was going to be a much bigger struggle than she had anticipated. But here was an opportunity. Could humanity and these newly evolved beings work together? Or was this the beginning of a new war? "There's a place for everyone in this world," Isolde said with determination. "I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye, see you in the next story.